You ever reach for your wallet and end up grabbing a truth you can't unsee? That morning, I wasn't looking for answers. I was just digging through Amanda's purse for a 20. Instead, my hand wrapped around a bottle of premium lubricant and a box of protection, the fancy kind she always swore gave her a rash. In that second, my stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on the stairs. The kitchen felt colder. The marriage I thought I had felt like a lie I was just now catching up to. Most men would have stormed into their wife's office, slammed the evidence on the desk, demanded the why and the who. But that's not me. I don't explode. I calculate. I collect proof. Because the best revenge isn't rage, it's patience. And patience leaves scars that never fade. Stick with me, because you're about to see what happens when a quiet man finally decides he's had enough. What would you do, rage or proof? I'm Mark Sullivan, 36, the guy neighbors call when their Wi-Fi dies right before kickoff. I've got a modest cape in the Boston suburbs, a 2-car driveway that actually fits one, and a garage full of tools I swear I'll organize next weekend. I fix networks, replace hard drives, and keep small businesses from losing their minds when the printer decides it's art. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. You do the job, you do it right, and people sleep better. That's my thing. Make chaos quiet. When you're the fix-it guy, you learn not to panic. You take a breath, find the problem, and work the checklist. Guys my age know this: mortgages, car payments, a kid's dentist bill. You can't afford drama. You keep your head, you show up. And until that morning with Amanda's purse, I thought showing up was enough. I thought doing my part meant the roof didn't leak and the lights stayed on. Turns out sometimes the real leak is behind a smile, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Amanda could walk into a room and have 3 people hustling by the time she reached the coffee machine. She's sharp, fast, good with names, executive assistant at Whitman and Goldstein downtown, which means she's the air traffic controller for men who bill by the hour and swear the clock speeds up at lunch. Early on, I loved that drive. It made me step up new certifications, extra projects over time. She joked that I spoke fluent error message. I joked that she collected calendars like trophies. It was our rhythm. She chased the next rung. I kept the ground steady. You tell yourself marriages are partnerships. You split chores, split bills, split the last slice of pizza. But ambition doesn't always split evenly. And when one person climbs, the other can get small without noticing. I didn't notice. I told myself long nights and late emails were the price of being with someone impressive. Maybe that was true in the beginning. But somewhere between the briefings and the conference centers, I got replaced by a schedule. Or maybe by something with better parking. On paper, we looked solid. 8 years married, a little backyard with patchy grass that hated July, and a dented grill that never quit. We did Sunday groceries, shared a Costco card, and kept a jar of quarters for the tolls when the app glitched. Summers at Revere Beach, winters shouting at the TV when the Celtics forgot how to box out. Nothing fancy, birthdays at the local steakhouse, anniversaries on the North Shore, if money allowed. Friends would say we were stable, and I took pride in that word. Stable is a man's compliment. It means you carry weight without making noise about it. I fixed what broke. The faucet, the router, the draft under the door. I told myself a calm home is a good home. Maybe I confused quiet with content. Maybe I mistook routine for trust. Either way, the story read clean until the sentence that didn't belong landed in her purse. Stability is strong until it isn't. And once a crack shows up, every quiet corner starts echoing. Amanda's ladder kept rising, new responsibilities, new access, new late nights, where just one more spreadsheet turned into don't wait up. I cheered. I really did. I ironed blouses I couldn't afford, packed lunches she forgot in the fridge, and texted good luck before the partner meetings. Meanwhile, I'm the manual guy. I read instructions. I back up data twice. I label cables because 6 months from now, I'll thank myself. That's how I am with feelings too. You name the thing, you put it where it belongs, and life keeps moving. The problem is, feelings don't stay where you file them. You can stack patience like spare hard drives and still wake up one day to find the shelf bending. I told myself she was busy, not distant. Focused, not gone. I accepted page after page of later until I realized the chapter had ended without me. Manuals teach you how to assemble a table, not how to put a marriage back together. And that's the night I learned the difference. Charles Whitman had the kind of confidence you rent by the hour, silver hair, perfect posture, a smile that said he enjoyed the mirror. Divorced, Portia, senior partner. His business card didn't need an address. You could find him by following the scent of cologne and a trail of headaches. Guys like him live in a different weather system. They never carry umbrellas. Someone appears with one. They don't wait for tables. The tables wait for them. I used to think men like that were just noise in the background, fine for TV, irrelevant in real life. But when background noise shows up in your kitchen through a name on your wife's phone, it gets loud. He wasn't 25 and reckless. He was old enough to know better. He understands leverage, how to read a room, how to spot a weakness. Men like that don't chase. They invite. And sometimes they invite women who are tired of being the reliable one's wife. I don't hate him for existing. I hate that he knew exactly where to stand. Boston's big, but suburbs talk. Your barber knows your mechanic, who knows your kid's math teacher, who's married to someone at City Hall. You can mind your business and still have a reputation you never auditioned for. I've watched rumors sink good people and bounce off jerks like raindrops on wax. So when you're holding secrets, you feel it in your bones. The town is a mile wide and an inch deep, and everything finds bottom. Saturday mornings at O'Malley's Tavern, guys argue Sox lineups and property taxes, and nobody asks the question they really want to ask. You doing okay at home? We're terrible at that. We'll help you move a couch at midnight, but won't touch your pain. That morning, staring at what I found in Amanda's purse, I heard the town in my head, the whispers, the looks, the pity disguised as sympathy. I wasn't going to be the man who made a scene and fed the beast. If this was going to leave a mark, it would be the truth's mark, not my temper's. It's funny what you remember. The fridge hum, the way the sun came in crooked through the blinds, my thumb resting on a zipper tab that suddenly felt heavy. I could have thrown the purse across the room. I could have called her right then, demanded a confession with the kind of voice that scares dogs. Instead, I stood there and let my heart catch up to my head. The body wants to sprint. The mind needs to walk. I set everything back exactly as I found it, like a man leaving a crime scene he didn't cause. I poured coffee, didn't drink it. I stared at our wedding photo on the wall and wondered when the smiles turned into costumes. You don't choose the punch. You only choose what you do after. And in that kitchen, with the world gone quiet and my pulse loud as a drum, I made a promise to myself I would not be baited into stupidity. If there was a truth, I'd find it. And I'd find it clean. We talk about manhood like it's a pose chest. Out voice up problem solved. But manhood for me has always been restraint. Knowing you could break something and deciding not to. I grabbed a notebook, wrote the date, the time, exactly what I touched, and where I found it. It felt clinical, almost cold. That helped. Emotions can lie, timestamps don't. I thought about calling a buddy. Then I thought about the advice he'd give and the life he'd have to carry if this went sideways. I thought about my father who used to say, "Don't let anger make decisions your wallet has to live with." I put the notebook in a drawer, washed my face, and practiced the most dangerous skill a man can have, acting normal. The plan wasn't fully formed yet, but the direction was clear. This would be about facts, not fireworks. If I was being played, the scoreboard would show it. If I was wrong, the truth would save me from doing damage I couldn't fix. I watched Amanda put on her heels that night, the ones that make hardwood floors sound like a metronome. She kissed my cheek, said the partners needed all hands at a downtown meeting, promised she wouldn't be late. I smiled, said good luck, and felt nothing move inside my chest. When the door closed, I sat with the quiet and let it settle. Some men kick doors. Some men do math. I opened my laptop, checked a few things that told me where evenings like this tend to end, and closed it again. No shouting match. No red face. No scene that ends up as somebody's story at a bar. I made a vow simple as tightening a bolt. I will not confront. I will observe. If there's a storm, I'll read the radar, not scream at the rain. I wasn't choosing to be weak. I was choosing to be certain. And certainty, once you have it, changes everything that comes next. Amanda said the partners needed all hands on a big matter. I nodded like any husband who's heard that sentence 100 times. Don't wait up. I smiled, said crush it, and loaded the dishwasher. That's marriage, right? You cheer from the sidelines and keep the house from going sideways. But the purse moment kept replaying like a bad replay angle you can't unwatch. I didn't accuse. I didn't fish for confessions. I just listened carefully to how she told the story, who was on the call, which hotel they'd booked conference rooms at, why the deadline moved. Men my age know the trick. Ask neutral questions and let the details stack themselves. If a picture's off, the frame will show it. I wasn't hunting drama. I was looking for alignment. And the more I listened, the less the bolts matched the holes. When she left that night, heels ticking the hardwood, I heard something new under the sound distance. That's when I told myself, no more guessing. Time to know. I played the part. Do you need dinner later? Want me to warm up leftovers? Normal questions. Normal tone. Meanwhile, I wrote down times, places, names like a foreman counting parts before the job starts. This wasn't paranoia. It was prevention. Men blow their lives up guessing. They keep the wrong receipts. They rage without records. I wasn't going to be that story at O'Malley's. I looked at our shared calendar, her emailed itinerary, even the small tells extra perfume, the second phone charger in her bag. None of it proves anything alone. Together, it starts humming. I didn't tell my buddies. I didn't call my sister. You share a suspicion, and it owns you. You write it down, and you own it. That night, lying on my side of the bed, I stared at the ceiling fan and felt the blades cut time into pieces. Tomorrow would be about clarity. Not confrontation, not drama clarity. And clarity, once it shows up, has a way of rearranging everything it touches. I've always kept track of the things that matter. Phones, laptops, the company van when a client forgets to return it on time. Call it being careful. Call it being a man who's paid for too many mistakes he didn't make. I checked what I could check without crossing lines, and I reminded myself that laws change zip code to zip code. The goal wasn't to play cop, it was to stop being blind. A location ping here, a timestamp there, and a pattern begins to draw itself like lines on a map. I wasn't stalking. I was confirming the life I was supposedly living. Men who fix things know the rule measure twice cut once. I measured quietly, privately, and with a mind on the fallout if I was wrong. If I found nothing, I'd sleep easier and never speak of it again. If I found something, I'd need to be strong enough to stay calm when calm was the last thing I wanted. Either way, the answer was coming. 3 days later, my phone buzzed while I was replacing a router at a dentist's office. Location alert. Downtown, number Marriott Courtyard near the highway, mid-afternoon, a time when office people love calling things off-site. I stared at the screen until the receptionist asked if I was okay. Fine, I said. Just a software update. I finished the job like my hands weren't shaking, signed the invoice, and walked to my truck at a normal pace that felt like lying. On the drive over, the sky looked painfully ordinary. Gray clouds, brake lights, a radio host filling silence with scores and ads. Men think big moments come with thunder. Sometimes they come with traffic. I took the next exit, pulled into a lot across from the hotel, and killed the engine. No adrenaline, no hero music, just me, a steering wheel, and the kind of silence that tells you the next 30 minutes might rewrite your life. The alert was still active. The only question left was whether I wanted to see. The courtyard lot was half full Reynolds sedans, business decals, a landscaper's truck idling, while two guys argued about lunch. I tucked my pickup behind a maintenance shed where you can see without being seen. That's a skill you learn in small towns, how to stand in plain sight and be invisible. I didn't bolt for the lobby. I watched the doors, the elevators through the glass, the way people carry themselves when they're arriving for work versus work. Men my age know that walk the slow confidence of someone who thinks the rules are for other people. 15 minutes felt like an hour. I listed what I'd do if I was wrong. Take Amanda to dinner, tell her I'd been stressed, apologize for the distance. List what I'd do if I was right, breathe. Document, keep my mouth shut until I had nothing left to ask. Then the elevator dinged, and time stopped pretending to be normal. The doors slid open, and Amanda stepped out. Black dress I bought for our anniversary hair, touched up like she'd planned this walk. She glanced both ways, that quick scan people do when they're trying not to look like they're scanning. My chest did that hollow drop you get when you miss a stare in the dark. She pressed a keycard to room 237, cracked the door, and smoothed her dress like she was resetting a story. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger needs oxygen. I didn't give it any. I raised my phone not like a paparazzi, more like a man making sure he won't be called a liar later. My reflection stared back at me in the screen, eyes flat mouth tight. I remember thinking, you asked for clarity. This is clarity. Don't blink. The door opened wider. She wasn't alone. Behind her came Charles Ty, loosened that easy smirk men wear when they've never been told no for long. The silver hair caught the lobby light like a spotlight. He adjusted his cuff, stepped past Amanda like he'd done it 100 times, and they laughed at something I didn't get to hear. There's a kind of laugh couples have when they're new and reckless, light, careless, like the world can't see them. But the world could. I could. I felt a calm I didn't trust wash over me, the kind you get right before a car crash, when everything slows down. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I watched the man who'd learned my wife's calendar better than I knew it, and I understood why men like him are dangerous. They make sin look organized. He straightened his jacket. She touched his sleeve. And then, like a movie that's too on the nose, they walked out together. They didn't leave with the space a work thing would have. They left with the closeness of a secret. On the sidewalk, she reached for him, and he leaned down, and the kiss wasn't quick or clumsy. It was practiced. Lipstick marked his collar, and a piece of my life marked the pavement. I didn't shout. I didn't run. I took the shot. Timestamp. Faces clear. A scene you can't spin away in a meeting. Men ask what betrayal feels like. It feels like watching someone else drive your truck off the lot with your plates still on it. It feels like standing in cold air that won't warm up. I lowered the phone and let the moment burn in smell of cut grass from the landscapers, the whir of the automatic doors, the click of her heel catching on a crack. Details matter later when people pretend they don't remember. The kiss ended. The story didn't. They headed for the lot, and I shrank into the shadow of the shed like a man avoiding a wasp he refuses to swat. My hands wanted to shake. I told them no. Big men lose small wars with their fingers. I let them pass, caught their reflections in the hotel glass, and saw two people pleased with themselves. That image will keep you from making dumb choices. It kept me from charging from turning this parking lot into a scene. I let my phone do the work one more time, plate numbers, time of day, a wide shot and a close one. Then I sat. I breathed. I counted to 60 twice like I was timing a network reset. When I looked up, their car had merged into traffic. The quiet was heavy, but it didn't crush me. It clarified me. I wasn't broken. I was awake. And awake men don't swing first. They plan. I drove off the lot like any other Tuesday, stopped at a light, and stared straight ahead so long, the guy behind me honked. I didn't care. I pulled into a strip mall parked by the dry cleaner and organized what I had: photos, times, places, little squares of truth that add up to a wall. I texted no one. Called no one. You don't ask the world what to do with your life. You tell it. I saved the files in 2 places, labeled them in a way future me would understand, and took one last look to make sure I hadn't imagined the whole thing. I hadn't. The final piece wasn't proof, it was resolve. Men think proof is the weapon. It isn't. Proof is the shield. Resolve is the blade. I started the truck. Felt the seat creak the way it always does, and made a promise I will not be baited, bullied, or rushed. I will move when I'm ready, and when I move, it will count. Pictures prove a moment. They don't prove a pattern. Any good man who's been lied to knows how that game goes. It was a misunderstanding. You caught the only time you're overreacting. I wasn't going to live under the weight of maybe. I told my boss I needed a day, maybe 2. Personal time, no drama, just a man handling his life. I packed what any regular guy would: thermos of coffee, a notebook, a phone with a full battery, and yes, a pair of binoculars I usually bring to ball games. I wasn't building a movie set. I was building a timeline. The plan was simple: show up when they show up, leave when they leave, write down what happened in between. If I was wrong, then I'd be the fool who spent a day people watching at a courtyard parking lot. I could live with that. If I was right, I'd have more than shock. I'd have sequence, and sequence is what cuts through excuses. The first hour was quiet, too quiet. Then the lobby doors started telling the truth. There's a rhythm to a stakeout that any dad who's waited through a 3-hour travel tournament understands. Sit still, keep your eyes open, and don't complain. I parked where the sun wouldn't cook me, cracked the window, and let the radio mumble scores I wasn't hearing. Coffee went from hot to warm. I wrote down every small thing: arrival times, which entrance they used, whether she carried a bag or just her phone. It felt ridiculous and necessary at the same time, like putting tape over a cracked window until you can fix the glass. A landscaper crew yelled about lunch. A traveling sales guy dragged a roller bag with one bad wheel. Everything normal, which made it worse. Normal is where people hide sin. An hour became 2, 2 became 3, and patience did what rage can't: built a record. Late afternoon, the elevator started getting busy again, that pre-dinner shuffle. My pen was already in my hand. The pattern I needed was walking toward me. I could feel it before I could name it. Then Tuesday repeated Thursday. By the end of week 1, I had a schedule. I didn't want Tuesdays and Thursdays mid-afternoon. Same hotel, same elevator up, same elevator down. People think betrayal is chaos, Most times, it's a routine. I'd show up early enough to watch the light slide across the lobby floor. I'd watch her enter with that focused walk that used to mean big meeting. I'd watch him trail by a few minutes like he owned the clock. It wasn't a fluke. It was a dance. Men my age know the power of a routine. You get up, you grind, you pay the mortgage. Routines make you reliable. The wrong routine can make you predictable. I wrote it all, time in, time out. The little tells, hair smooth, jacket straightened the way she checked her phone before the doors opened. Every page tightened something inside my chest, but it also settled my mind. When you see the same movie 3 times, you stop arguing with the plot. And once you stop arguing, you decide what you're going to do in the 3rd act. I booked a room cash one night on a floor below theirs. Not to trap, not to trick, to witness. Thin walls are part of business hotels. Anyone who travels for work knows that. I kept the TV off, the lights low, the notebook open. I wasn't there to record or to play detective with gadgets. I was there to confirm what my gut already knew and my eyes had already seen. The hallway smelled like industrial cleaner and overcooked coffee, that lonely scent every road warrior recognizes. My hands wanted to shake. I told them no. I sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, and waited for the soft thud of footsteps and the click of a lock. It came. A door closed above me, and the ceiling turned into a drumhead. You don't always hear words through walls. Sometimes you just hear confidence, the careless kind. Laughter first, then voices, then the kind of inside jokes people don't earn in a week. I set my pen down so it wouldn't snap. Then a sentence landed like a hammer. It started as light, breathy laughter, the kind that says we're getting away with it. Then came the edges. A man's voice smug and a woman's voice too loud for a work thing. I didn't need every word, tone tells the story, but certain lines cut clean. Her husband's completely clueless, he said, like my life was a punchline on a firm retreat. The ceiling carried the sound just enough to make denial impossible. I stared at the cheap art on the wall and let the paint hold my anger. You can break a lamp and still be the loser, or you can write down what was said and let time carry the weight for you. I chose time. I wrote the quote word for word with the exact time. It felt surgical and cruel in equal measure. I thought of all the nights I stayed late to finish a job, so our life stayed easy. That laugh upstairs told me exactly where that effort ranked. The laughter got louder. And then the joke shifted in my direction. Her husband, he said, like he'd found a good opening act. He's a night guy. Predictable. Boring. The word boring hung in the air longer than it should have. Men who fix problems get called boring by men who cause them. I pressed my thumb into the edge of the notebook until I felt skin, not paper. I wasn't going to argue with the ceiling. I was going to build a case that didn't need my voice. I wrote it down, exact phrasing, exact minute. You hear something like that? Your body does 3 things at once: wants to swing, wants to leave, wants to freeze. I chose the 4th document. If you've ever been called boring for being reliable, you know the insult doesn't land if you know who you are. Still, it cut. It cut because the person laughing knew exactly what I gave up to keep our life simple. Upstairs, a glass clinked. They were toasting something. Downstairs, a man learned exactly what he was up against. It wasn't their charm. It was their contempt. Then Amanda laughed in a way I hadn't heard at home in a long time. You know what excitement he brought to our marriage last month, she said. A new password manager. They both laughed like I delivered a fruitcake to a firehouse. I stared at my hands and saw every overtime shift I'd taken, every holiday call I'd answered. So our bills got paid, so our systems ran, so our life kept the lights on. You bring security into a life, and some people call it boring. Funny how they only honor safety once it's gone. I wrote her words down and underlined them. It wasn't the technology that hurt. It was the message. Stability was a joke to people who were full on chaos. Men who've kept a family afloat know this sting you give them steady. They crave sparks. Sparks feel good until they burn through the floor. The laughter rolled on. I let it. Every laugh is a receipt. I plan to keep all of them. Minutes stretched. The ceiling turned into a courtroom where I had no standing, but all the evidence. They picked me apart like it was a hobby, my job, my habits, even the cereal I like. It was petty and still somehow deadly. Insults don't have to be creative to be effective. They just have to be repeated. I kept writing. I didn't write feelings. I wrote facts. Time, sentence, context. The notebook became a map of 2 people's arrogance. Somewhere in the middle of it, my anger cooled into something sharper, not bitterness, clarity. You can't argue someone into respecting you. You can only let them define themselves and move accordingly. The clock on the nightstand clicked to the hour like a metronome. Their voices rose and fell. Mine didn't. I'd walked into that room a husband with questions. I was leaving a man with answers, and once a man has answers, the power shifts. The last thing I wrote in that hour was simple. Remember this. Not the pain. The pattern. My hand cramped. The coffee went cold. The room smell got worse. Small discomforts tried to pull me out of focus. I wouldn't let them. I stretched my fingers, shook out my wrist, and kept going. Somewhere upstairs, a chair scraped. Somewhere inside me, a wire tightened to the point of humming. I took 3 long breaths the way you do before lifting something heavy and reminded myself what this was about: truth, not theatrics. Men burn their lives down over pride. They also save them by learning when to stand still. I chose still. Another line floated through the drywall like a dare, something about bored husbands and deserving better. I didn't spike. I didn't sink. I wrote it, underlined it, and added a star. That would matter later when people pretended they never said it. I closed the notebook just long enough to feel the weight of it in my palm. It wasn't just paper. It was leverage earned the hard way. And I understood, maybe for the first time, that quiet can be a weapon. When the hallway finally softened and the footsteps moved away, I didn't rush to the door. I waited a full minute, then another, like a man letting concrete set. I packed the notebook, capped the pen, and looked around the room I'd used like a waiting room for a new life. The TV stayed off. The bed stayed made. I left the key on the desk and walked out with less noise than I brought in. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter but cleaner, like a storm had aired out something stale. I didn't chase them. I didn't try to intercept. I'd done what I came to do: convert suspicion into certainty, turn rage into record. At the truck, I sat with the door open, let the evening roll in. Photos capture faces, notes capture character. Together they build a story you don't have to explain. I started the engine. The next steps would require the same discipline as today. No speeches, no scenes, just a man who knows finally what he knows. They picked thrill. I picked consequences. Not fireworks, not damage consequences. That's a different kind of math. Rage is cash you burn for heat. Consequence is a bill that always comes due. I sat at the kitchen table that night with my notebook closed and my pulse steady. I didn't need a movie scene. I needed a finish line I wouldn't regret crossing. Men my age know this drill. You don't fight every battle, you fight the ones that change the scoreboard. So I set a simple rule: be deliberate. Let truth travel. I'd built a record, and records outlast stories. I cleaned the counters, took the trash out, and kept my voice the same as always. If the house was going to shake, it wouldn't be because I kicked a beam. It would be because the weight above it was rotten. People confuse quiet with weakness. Quiet is where decisions get sharp. I wasn't planning drama. I was planning distance. From this moment forward, I'd trade impulse for leverage, and I wouldn't spend a word I couldn't defend. Amanda came home, pale hands on her stomach, that tight breath people get when something's wrong and they don't want to name it. "Bad lunch," she said, heading straight for the bathroom. I offered ginger ale, set a cool glass down, and stepped back. You can be decent without being blind. She moved around the kitchen like the floor hurt. I noticed small things: too much perfume for a late meeting, makeup smudged at the corners, the kind of tired that doesn't come from spreadsheets. I didn't ask questions she could practice answers to. I kept it to basics. "You good? Need anything?" She nodded, said she'd sleep it off, and disappeared down the hall with that careful walk you save for headaches and hangovers. I did the dishes, wiped the table, and stared at the spot where the purse had been the morning this all started. A house tells you the truth if you let it. The hum of the fridge, the way silence sits in a chair. Something had shifted. I didn't have to push it. It was coming to me. Next day, a buddy from the gym called while I was between service tickets. "You hear about Whitman?" he said, voice pitched like gossip he couldn't sit on. "Had some kind of medical meltdown at the country club. Right in the dining room. Paramedics, the whole show." I leaned against my truck and watched a cloud fail to decide on rain. "Huh," I said, like a man who had nothing to add. He gave me the rest the way guys do. Half laughter, half apology for laughing. I didn't join in. I filed it. People love a spectacle. They don't love the bill that follows. Whatever happened to Charles wasn't my story to tell. My story was simpler: keep my hands clean and my evidence tighter than any rumor mill. He finished with, "They're saying food poisoning." I said, "Happens," and let the call end. In my head, I heard my father again. "Don't meet chaos on its level. Make it climb to yours." I put the phone down, set another reminder to back up my files, and went back to work. By evening, the suburbs did what they do best, turn a spark into a windstorm. Something odd with Whitman. Heard he left lunch green around the gills. Must be bad oysters. Jokes travel faster than facts, and Boston humor doesn't pull punches. I kept my mouth shut. In small towns, you're always auditioning without knowing it. You learn to control your face. You nod at the barber, tip the waitress, and never let the guy in the next booth write your script. I went to O'Malley's for a burger, sat at the end of the bar, and listened to men argue about the Sox bullpen like it was national security. No one asked me about my marriage. That's how men operate. We'll help you move a couch at midnight, but we won't touch your heart unless you drop it at our feet. On the TV, a news crawl said nothing. On my phone, a file folder said everything. I paid cash, walked out into a cool breeze, and felt the story rolling downhill. Gravity doesn't need help. It just needs time. 2 weeks later, Amanda's voice had that shake to it, the kind you only hear at funerals and in hospital waiting rooms. "Mark, we need to talk." We sat at the kitchen table like it was a negotiation over a bill we couldn't split. Her hands were trembling, eyes raw like she hadn't slept. She tried to start 3 times and failed all 3. I waited. Patience can be cruel when you've earned it. Finally, there was an incident. At a hotel. She said the word hotel like it might shatter if she dropped it. Something went wrong. We ended up at the ER. My mind didn't sprint. It walked. ER means records. Records mean timestamps. Timestamps like mine. I kept my voice even. "Are you okay?" She nodded too fast, then shook her head. Both truths were probably real. The story was coming whether I pulled it or not. I folded my hands, rested my forearms on the table, and let the kitchen hum. Whatever she confessed wouldn't be the first time I'd heard it. It would be the first time she had. She said the doctors couldn't get something off, some kind of dye, some kind of burn. Nothing life-threatening, but nothing you'd want to explain to coworkers on a Tuesday either. "It won't wash out," she whispered, eyes falling to her hands like they didn't belong to her. I didn't ask how. I didn't ask why. Men think they want details when really they want relief. Details don't give relief. They give pictures you'll never erase. I stuck to the line I could live with. "Do you need anything from me?" She shook her head, then nodded, then tried to choose. "Just don't hate me," she said, and wiped at a tear that only made a smear worse. In another room, our wedding photo smiled like it remembered us. In this room, the truth sat between us like a third chair. The color wouldn't leave. Neither would the facts I'd collected. I didn't reach across the table. I didn't pull back either. I let the space stay honest. Sometimes love is a hand. Sometimes love is not lying. By afternoon, Charles called my phone like he owned the number. His voice tried to sound calm and landed somewhere between lawyer and cornered animal. "We should discuss what happened." I said, "What happened where?" He started stacking words, exposure attack, police investigator, like he was building a ladder out of nouns. I let it wobble. "Here's the thing about leverage. You don't display it. You place it." Any call he made to anyone with authority would come with a mandatory confession, a hotel time partner's wife. Explain that to a managing committee. Explain it to a client who reads news. "Are you accusing me of something I asked?" Voice level. He hedged, then backed up, then pretended he'd never said what he said. "This isn't over," he muttered. "You're right," I replied. When the line went dead, I saved the voicemail, like I save receipts. Men blow up at the wrong time and lose the right case. I wasn't going to be a headline. I was going to be a record. Amanda cried that night from the guest room, a sound that hits you even when you don't want it to. I brought ibuprofen and a glass of water and set them on the nightstand. She looked at me like I was a stranger and a lifeline at the same time. "It burns," she said, and the way she said it made me wish I believed in easy fixes. I kept my feet planted. Compassion doesn't require surrender. "Rest," I told her. "Call in sick tomorrow." She asked if I could hold her hand. I stood there a long beat and felt the old reflex comfort, reassure, patch the leak. Then I remembered who kicked the pipe. "I'll be in the other room." I said, not cold, not warm, just true. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're clarity. In the living room, I muted the TV and listened to the house breathe. A man can be kind and still be done. That's a sentence you don't understand until you have to say it out loud, even if only to yourself. The next morning, the internet did what it does, took a private humiliation, and made it public property. A clip from a hotel hallway, a still image that shouldn't exist, headlines that smiled while pretending to report, green lovers someone typed, and the phrase stuck like gum on a shoe. I didn't share, I didn't like, I didn't feed it. I saved what mattered in my own folder and turned my phone face down. Men who've lived long enough know how fast a joke becomes a brand you can't peel off. Friends texted half questions with full concern. I ignored them. You don't crowdsource dignity. Meanwhile, the file names I'd chosen, dates, times, places, sat quiet as a locked toolbox in the bed of a truck. I called no reporters, no bosses, no friends of friends. Sometimes the strongest move is to let gravity do its work while you mind your footing. By lunch, I'd heard the title whispered in 2 different places. By dinner, I didn't need to hear it again. By nightfall, you could feel Boston watching without looking, neighbors watering plants, a beat too long, a cashier making eye contact just a second past normal, a text from a number I didn't have saved. We should talk. Charles again. Of course it was. I stood on my front steps and let the cool air hit the back of my neck. A kid biked by, a dog barked twice, the world pretended to be regular. That's the hardest part, how ordinary the day stays while your life shifts plates underground. I didn't answer the text. I didn't open the front door to anyone who might be waiting on the sidewalk with a speech. Men lose control by grabbing for it. I chose the opposite. Inside, I sat at the table where this began and laid out what I knew in order, what I saw, what I heard, what they admitted by accident. The pattern was complete. The next move would be made in daylight, in public, and on my terms. And as if on cue, the doorbell rang. My phone lit up like a warning flare. Charles. I let it ring twice, then answered. His voice came clipped and shaky, the way a polished man sounds when polish fails. You're involved. Not a question, a verdict he hoped would stick. I kept my tone flat. In what exactly? He launched into a blur of words. Incident, substances, attack, throwing nouns like sand, hoping one would blind me. I let the silence do what it does to guilty people. He filled it. That's the thing about power, it hates quiet. In the doorway, Amanda stepped into view, eyes wide, hand raised like a referee begging for time. I didn't give it. If you have an accusation, make it clear, I said. He didn't. He couldn't. He pivoted to threats dressed as warnings, then hung up without landing a punch. I set the phone on the table and looked at Amanda. He called me, I said. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. The first rule of leverage is simple. Let them say too much. He just had. After the call, the house went quiet in a way that wasn't peace. Amanda hovered near the hallway like someone deciding between doors, fight or flight, confess or deny. What did he say? She asked, already knowing the part that mattered. I didn't hand her the script. Enough, I said. Not enough to help him. She flinched at that last word, him, as if the pronoun itself was a confession. Men my age learn to hear what isn't said. She wasn't asking about the call. She was asking if her world still had a lid on it. I poured water, slid a glass across the table, and didn't touch mine. Control is a posture, but it's also a pace. You walk, not run. You answer, you don't explain. We're not doing this tonight, I told her. Get some rest. She nodded the kind of nod that means anything but agreement, and disappeared down the hall. I cleaned the counter I'd already cleaned and listened to the clock take sides. When the doorbell rang, I didn't jump. I'd been expecting the knock. I opened the door to Charles Green, tint still clinging to his skin like a bad decision suit, wrinkled as if it had been arguing with a chair. He tried for calm and landed on cornered. We need to talk, he said, voice scraping like it had swallowed gravel. I stepped onto the porch and pulled the door behind me until the latch clicked. We're talking. He scanned the street, clocking the neighbors, the open blinds, the camera under the eave he'd missed last time he drove through this neighborhood in his Porsche. Men who live in glass towers hate porches. They don't control the audience. He leaned in. You're going to regret this. I didn't move. You came to my house to threaten me. His jaw flexed. To warn you. The difference was lost on both of us. I held his eyes, kept my voice level, and did the one thing men like him can't stand. I didn't fill the space. He blinked first. The performance was slipping. That's when I let him see me press record. Let's be clear, I said, holding my phone where he could see it. You're on my property. That camera under the eave sees you. This phone hears you. Choose your words. He swallowed. He's used to rooms that protect him, tables that tilt his way, assistants who clean up his misspeaks. Porches are honest. They make cowards loud and brave men quiet. You knew about the affair. He snapped the word landing like a dropped dish. I raised an eyebrow. Repeat that for the mic. A muscle twitched in his cheek. He looked down the street and realized what I already had eyes were on us. Not the whole city, just enough of the block to make truth heavy. Stop recording, he said. No, I answered. Start explaining. Something cracked, then not his voice, his posture. Predators hate daylight. He straightened his wrinkled jacket like it could put the moment back together. It couldn't. You can't use this. He tried. Men love rules until they finally meet one that doesn't bend for them. We'll see, I said, and he knew we would. Anger makes smart men clumsy. He went from lawyer to loud neighbor in 3 sentences. This is harassment, he said. You sabotaged us. You knew we were... He stopped. Sucked air, realized the word waiting in his throat. You were what I asked, nice and slow, like a man reading a menu out loud. He didn't say it. He didn't have to. The porch light caught the green smear along his collar and did the talking for him. From across the street, Mrs. Donnelly pretended to prune a plant that didn't need pruning. 2 kids coasted by on bikes and stared. It's a humbling thing, realizing the audience you counted on is now the one you fear. He stepped back, then forward, then nowhere. This isn't over, he said again, smaller this time. You keep repeating yourself, I told him. It doesn't make the ending change. He squared up like a man who remembers the gym too fondly. I didn't budge. Power shifted and he felt it. When he finally turned, it wasn't a retreat. It was a reveal he had no move. He stalked down my walk and into the street, head on a swivel, pride dragging behind him like a torn sleeve. I didn't chase. I didn't gloat. I let the neighborhood take its mental Polaroids. They'd talk regardless. I just made sure the picture was accurate. Inside, Amanda stood halfway down the hall, frozen between rooms and Roll's wife-accomplice witness. What did you say to him? She asked. Less than he said to me, I answered, and set my phone on the table where the red recording line finally went still. She glanced at it like it might bite. He'll go to the police, she whispered. Maybe I said and explain what? That hung in the air like a choice we hadn't made but had to live with. I poured water I didn't drink and watched the porch camera feed roll back 30 seconds at a time. There are moments you keep for yourself and moments you keep for safety. This was the latter. The phone buzzed again, and I didn't need to look to know who it was. Charles texted first. We can make this go away. Then called voice sanded down to something that tried to pass for reason. Let's be adults, he said, a line men use when they want you to give up your spine. This has gotten out of hand. I'm prepared to offer $20,000 for your discretion. He said it like he was tipping a valet. I let a beat pass, then another. Money is a language. It says more about the speaker than the listener. You think this is about cash? I asked. Silence. He thought it was about winning. Men like him only speak in wins and losses. Here's my offer, I said. You resign. You leave town. You never contact my wife again. In return, I don't share what you've already admitted in broad daylight to people who take ethics seriously. He exhaled a hiss more than a breath. That's extortion. No, I said. That's consequences. He didn't hang up right away. He hoped I'd blink. I didn't. Some prices you pay in money. Others you pay in reputation. He finally chose the cheaper one. After the call, the text changed shape. Shorter. Sloppier. Panic has a tone you can hear even when it's typed. You'll regret this. We're both going to suffer. Think about your career. That last one made me laugh without sound. My career is built on trust. Show up, fix what's broken, leave things better than you found them. You don't ruin a man like that with gossip. You ruin him with truth, and I'd already lived mine. Amanda sat across from me, eyes red fingers tracing circles on the table like she was trying to spin a time machine. What are you gonna do? She asked. What I said, I answered. Not loud, not soft, final. She looked smaller than like someone stepping out of a costume they forgot they were wearing. Somewhere in town, a rumor found a new mouth. Somewhere else, a screen lit up with a clip and a caption I didn't need to read. I powered my phone down and let quiet replace threat. Quiet isn't surrender, it's staging. Morning brought clarity the way good coffee brings focus. I wrote 3 sentences on a sheet of paper, what I'd accept, what I wouldn't, what happens if lines get crossed. Not a contract, a compass. Men get lost when they're made try to steer by feelings alone. I folded it, put it in my wallet, and felt the absurd comfort of a boundary you can touch. Amanda watched me searching for a version of me she preferred. People will talk, she said like it was a reason to choose shame. They already are, I replied, and they'll stop when there's nothing new to say. The doorbell rang again, earlier, sharper. I opened it to no one and found a thick envelope on the mat, the kind you use when you want paper to feel heavy. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. Money is a confession when it arrives unasked. I slid it under a stack of mail and let it sit. Some bait isn't for swallowing. It's for documenting. By afternoon, the shift went public. A quiet memo at Whitman and Goldstein Personal. Leave the euphemism people buy when they're allergic to truth. A partner's name missing from a website bio. The kind of edits you only notice if you're looking, and I was. My phone lit again, unknown number this time. You got what you wanted, Charles said like a man who just bargained with gravity. Not yet, I answered. What I want is distance. He said nothing for a long beat. Then, you won't hear from me again. I believed him not because he'd found integrity, but because he'd finally found fear. I ended the call and stood in the same kitchen where this started, in the same patch of light that had once felt warm. The house didn't look different. I did. Men love to think change comes with a soundtrack. Mine came with a paper trail and a porch camera. I poured coffee, took a sip, and set the cup down without shaking. Tomorrow, I'd make the next move in daylight, on record, and on my terms. We sat at the table like two people waiting for a verdict we already knew. Amanda folded her hands, unfolded them, then finally said the line that splits a life. It started at the Christmas party. The words were small, the echo wasn't. She talked about champagne and compliments, how nothing became something, how just talking became a habit with a door. I didn't interrupt. Men think the pain is in the revelation. It's not. It's in realizing how ordinary the path was. Office lights, late emails, a ride home that took a detour. She reached for my hand. I kept mine on the table. I made a mistake, she said. I shook my head. Mistakes are stumbles. This was a route. Her eyes searched my face for the man who used to fix things. He wasn't here. I don't know if that made me cruel or honest. Maybe both. She looked down, and I understood confession doesn't rebuild. It just stops the pretending. And once the pretending stops, decisions get simple. She wanted the word mistake to carry the load. I couldn't let it. This wasn't a slip, I said, voice steady. It was a series of choices, text by text, room by room. That landed like a tool dropped on a garage floor, sharp and final. She flinched, then tried the word that keeps marriages on life support. Counseling men my age know that offer. Sometimes it's salvation, sometimes it's a stall. I looked at the wall where our wedding photo hung at two people who wanted the same future and didn't know how to keep it. I'm not against repair, I said. I'm against pretending there's something left to repair. She cried in that breathless way that makes you want to fold. I held my posture. Compassion isn't the same as reunion. You want forgiveness, I told her. Right now, what I have is clarity. She nodded like someone hearing a door lock. We sat in the hum of the fridge until the only sound left was a clock measuring what we'd already lost. I stood. The next step had a name. The next morning, she tried again. We can do therapy, she said, voice soft like a sales pitch for hope. We can fix this. I shook my head. We can fix a leak. We can't fix contempt. It wasn't clever. It was the truth I'd earned. You're not sorry for what you did, I said. You're sorry you got caught. That's a sentence men avoid because it closes doors. But closed doors can be merciful. She asked if I could give it time. I told her time had already been given 6 months of it, in fact. The notebook on the counter made a quiet shape. I said I'd call a lawyer. She didn't argue. When someone stops negotiating, it's not surrender. It's recognition. I made breakfast the way I always do. Eggs, toast, nothing special, and we ate like coworkers on a deadline. When I put my plate in the sink, I looked up and realized I wasn't waiting for permission to move on. Men sometimes need a ritual. Mine was signing my name on a form that says enough. Filing for divorce didn't feel like victory. It felt like finishing a job you didn't want but refused to leave half done. The clerk stamped papers with a thud that sounded like a chapter ending. My lawyer spoke in calm sentences about timelines, assets, what's fair, what's enforceable. I listened, answered, signed. No shouting, no last-minute speeches, no scene in the hallway. Outside, the air had that salt hint you get near the water, and I let it clear my head. Back home, Amanda was quiet. She asked what happens next. We divide what can be divided, I said. We keep what can be kept. She nodded, eyes red but dry. A strange peace settled between us, the kind two people feel when they're done hurting each other with hope. I boxed up a few of her things, labeled them with a Sharpie, put them by the door. Not punishment, process. Men like process when feelings run hot. That night, I slept like a man who'd made a hard call and could live with it. Morning would bring numbers. We met at the lawyer's office with lists that looked like grocery runs for a life. House, cars, savings, retirement accounts, debt. The language of staying becomes the math of leaving. I wasn't interested in squeezing blood from a stone or playing hero. I wanted clean. I kept the house because I'd kept it running. I kept my truck because it's how I work. I kept the savings I'd built one overtime at a time. She kept her car, her personal accounts, and the credit card debt that had grown while I was fixing other people's problems. It wasn't revenge. It was alignment. You pack what you brought. She didn't argue. That surprised me and didn't. People fight hardest when they believe they're owed. She looked like someone who finally saw the bill. We signed what had to be signed. The lawyer slid papers into neat folders that made endings look civilized. Outside, we stood on the sidewalk like strangers after a job interview. "Take care," I said. She said it back. It wasn't warmth. It was mercy. The first week alone felt like walking through a house you just bought and suddenly realizing it's yours to maintain. The quiet didn't bite. It settled. I fixed a leaking faucet that had been singing for months. I organized the garage I kept promising to tackle. I cooked for one and discovered I oversalt when nobody's watching. Small things, humble things. Men act like peace needs a mountain. Sometimes it needs a broom. I stopped checking my phone for storms. The porch camera captured only delivery guys and a neighbor's cat. Amanda sent a text about picking up the last box. I left it on the porch and didn't wait by the window. The Celtics lost by 4. I didn't yell. The quiet made room for something I hadn't felt since the early days of our marriage myself. That's not a triumph. It's a recovery. One night, I stood in the backyard under a weak porch light and realized my shoulders weren't up around my ears. That's when it hit me I wasn't moving on. I was moving back to me. News travels. A friend said Charles had drifted south chasing a smaller title and a bigger tan insurance law in Florida, the kind of line that sounds like a demotion even if it pays. I didn't gloat. You don't feed yourself with someone else's hunger. I logged it as a footnote. Men like him land somewhere. They always do. But the altitude changes. Power loves the view. Consequence changes the skyline. I heard he'd swapped the Porsche for something polite and learned how to say ongoing claim with a smile. Maybe he rebuilt. Maybe he didn't. Either way, he wasn't my problem, and that was the point. I stopped tracking his weather. You only look back to confirm you're not walking in circles. One night at O'Malley's, someone cracked a joke about green with envy and the table snorted. I let it pass. Revenge that needs applause is just another addiction. I wasn't chasing karma. I was paying attention to mine. The beer tasted exactly like beer. That's a gift when you've been living on adrenaline. Word was Amanda took a job at a call center off the highway, sharing walls with strangers and learning which neighbors play music too loud on weekdays. I didn't cheer. I didn't mourn. The life we built had been split into receipts and keys. People asked if I'd reached out, if I'd consider a coffee to clear the air. There's nothing to clear when the air is finally clean. I wish her safety a steady paycheck nights without panic. That's enough. The mind plays tricks. When you're tired, you remember the good joke, not the full cost of the show. I let memories stop at the door. I wasn't her fixer anymore, and that role, once set down, felt lighter than I expected. Sometimes love ends with a fight. Ours ended with a filing. It's quieter. It also lasts. I mowed the lawn, waved to the neighbor, and put new batteries in the smoke detector. Life kept asking for small faithfulness. I kept giving it. That's how men heal one task, then the next. I ended up back at O'Malley's Tavern corner stool game on burger hot enough to burn if you rush it. Mike slid onto the next seat, didn't ask questions, just tossed me a look that said he knew enough. "You good?" he finally asked. "Yeah," I said, and felt it be true. Not happy, not triumphant, steady. We watched the Celtics give away a lead and laughed the tired laugh of men who've seen that before. No one brought up the scandal. No one needed to. The town had moved on to weather and taxes, and whether the kid from down the street was any good at shortstop. I paid my tab, left a good tip, and stepped into a night that felt honest. On the drive home, the radio landed on a song from the year we got married. I didn't change it. I let it play out and didn't chase the feeling. At a red light, I looked in the rear view and saw a man I recognized. He wasn't new. He was finally back. Some men throw keys. Some men shout. I did something else. I let the truth do the heavy lifting. Amanda and Charles didn't need me to ruin them. Their choices did that on schedule. I was the witness who kept receipts and stopped pretending. People say I went too far. Maybe they've never lived with a quiet lie that eats your sleep. I call it fair. You draw a line, you hold it, and you live with the echoes. The house is calm now. The porch light clicks on at dusk. The tools are where I leave them. Dinner for one tastes like peace, not punishment. I don't replay the worst parts. I remember the lesson: the best revenge isn't fire, it's gravity. You don't shove. You step back and let actions land where they belong. If that sounds cold, it isn't. It's closure. I'm Mark Sullivan, and I'm free. What about you? In my shoes, explode on impact, or stay quiet and keep receipts. Comment, fire, if you'd confront, or gravity, if you'd choose certainty, and tell me why.